Good morning. I am Admiral Jim Robb, President of the National Training and Simulation Association, and welcome to the NTSA webinar for September. iFEST Innovators lead the way to thriving in the new normal. iFEST 2021 was held online 31 August to 2 September and was sponsored by NTSA in collaboration with the Advanced Distributed Learning Initiative, ADL. It provided an opportunity for thought leaders, policymakers, practitioners to share the latest developments in the distributed learning community's quest to modernize the education and training enterprise. Despite a year and a half of unprecedented challenge brought on by the global pandemic, the conference showcased an impressive array of learning technology, interoperability solutions, and other innovations to ensure that all can learn and thrive in this new normal. So today it's my great pleasure to introduce the iFEST leadership that will give us be part of the panel. The iFEST 2021 chair was Keith Burskins. He's the Deputy Director of Academic Affairs at the Army University. Next, we have the iFEST Conference Chair, Frank Kelly, SES, who's a retired Brigadier General. He's Vice President of the Defense Acquisition University. The iFEST Council of Chairs and the 2019 Program Chair, Aaron Presnall, who's President of the Jefferson Institute. Leading iFEST 2022 is Angie Gamble, who's Training Systems Management Specialist at CACT, and she's got the wonderful job of being the 2022 Program Chair. Together, they make up the leadership team of over 40 members of the program committee, which will bring together next year's event. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Angie and thank her for all of her efforts and the team's efforts. And I'll see you at the back end of the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Rear Admiral Robb, for the introduction. Today, we're going to discuss some key takeaways from 2021 and look at iFEST 2022 and how you can get involved to help create a responsive and relevant event. Dr. Burkins was the program chair for iFEST 2021, and we're going to give him an opportunity now to give us an overview of iFEST 2021. Keith?
Yeah, thanks, Angie, and hello to everyone. This is the second year that we did a virtual or distributed learning conference, and we thought it appropriate that this year, having learned, we believe, lessons over the last year and a half from the COVID pandemic and the transitions we had to make in education, that learning and thriving in the new normal would be an appropriate theme. The conference this year featured 3 days of live keynotes, panels, and activities, and more than 40 posters and online presentations for the audience. We expanded our keynote this year to include government agency, legislative, and military leaders. It gave us 3 different perspectives on this area of specialty. And hopefully we will wind up in the future trying to get a leading academic to provide the academic perspective. We also had featured a live stream War on the Rocks podcast. It was the second year in a row that we did that. And it provides a less formal way to be able to have discussions with key leaders about the trends and the direction of education. We did set a record last year, and then this year we broke our own record when it came to an attendance of over 525 attendees. And very notably, we also broke our record of international attendees with 56 attendees from 20 countries outside the United States. One of the unanticipated consequences of having an online conference is that we have been able to expand the number of people that can participate, especially our international audience, because they obviously would incur much more significant costs to be able to attend a live conference. The final new initiative we did this year was that we took the information provided by presenters and we provided them opportunities to submit articles to go into a special issue of Computers in Education. So you can look forward to seeing that online within the next 30 to 60 days. I appreciate everybody tuning in this year. It was a major success. Again, the professionalism of NTSA and ADL was obvious in the product and the quality of the conference. I'd like to turn it over to the roundtable group now for the roundtable discussion. Angie?
Okay, thanks, Keith. Right now, we're going to go into our roundtable discussion where we're going to talk about the learning modernization trends and topics that dominated iFEST 2021 and share some takeaways and feedback from the conference. We're going to start off first off with our keynote speakers that presented, and Keith is going to give us some feedback and takeaways from General Hill's discussion.
Major General Hill is my boss, and so I asked him if he would talk to us about the initiatives that are occurring Army-wide in response to the COVID-19, but more importantly, as a way for us to look at readiness for any type of contingency operation that would make it so that our traditional brick and mortar education could not be conducted as usual. General Hill presented some key concepts that we're pursuing in the Army. Student-centered. We have always attempted to achieve student-centered instruction, but within the face-to-face environment, it's much harder to tailor a learning experience for the individual learner. So one of the things we look forward to with using more technology in our learning and with blended learning approaches is the opportunity to truly tailor, based on student-centered requirements, the educational experience. We're also looking at the multimodal blended learning portion. Over the last year, TRADOC, that's the Army's Training and Doctrine Command, had all of the different schools review their professional military education and civilian education courses to determine if those courses or parts of courses could be effectively transitioned to a distributive learning environment. This would allow us to have a blended learning design to our courses. It would allow us to save resources within the institution potentially, because DL is not always less expensive. But more importantly, it would have us modernizing how we present that information, allowing us to tailor that learning experience, and it would keep us on a daily basis exercising the readiness that we need to in order to be able to deliver learning anytime, anywhere to our force. The other key idea that General Hill presented was the Army's initiative to adopt a learning ecosystem approach. The book Modernizing Learning that was co-edited by Dr. Walcott and Dr. Schatz was the catalyst for the Army to look into this with sincerity, and we determined that it is definitely the way of the future, and then we are borrowing the ideas and the concepts from that book in order to establish our own learning ecosystem. That will be reflected in the publication of our Army Learning Concept 2035, which we expect to be published in January or February of 2022. And that summarizes the comments from General Hill. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Keith, for that summary. And then I will talk about, we had a government keynote speaker who was Mr. Dustin Brown. He is the SES Deputy Assistant Director for Management, Office of Management and Budget. And he just threw out a few knowledge nuggets that we can gain from, and one was driving change across the government, improving employee engagement, and form partnerships to rebuild the workforce, because we all know with COVID-19, it has it has moved everyone to look at not just how we learn and educate and train differently, but also the workforce, and looking at reskilling the workforce to be able to move forward in the future with more innovation. And one of the websites that he had put out is performance.gov. And this is where you can go and see all the agencies' performance goals, and try to see if you can possibly build a partnership with another agency that may be working on something that's relevant to what you are working on, to help with collaboration. So those were some of the key points that he put out. And also for our legislative keynote speaker, it was Congressman Bobby Scott. And he put out a few tidbits as well. A lot of his was geared, like said previously, at reskilling, needs of workforce development. And also one thing that we would like to focus on for iFEST 2022 is how to get more involvement with academia, right? He had mentioned that higher education, making sure they have the resources they need to support the reskilling of the workforce, and make sure that the graduates are coming out with the skill sets that's needed to go into industry. So those were some of the topics, keynotes, tidbits that came from the keynote speakers. Now we're going to move into our panels, and we're going to start off with Frank Kelly. He was the moderator for the panel Innovation in Government Learning Systems. So we're going to have him give us some oversight on some of the discussion from that panel.
Well, thanks. It's great to see everybody that worked this year on 21 again. And I just got to tell you that it's first of all, Angie, thank you so much for stepping up and taking the lead on 22. And I know that, you know, I'm not going to speak for Aaron, but Aaron, and I can speak for myself and probably Keith, are really glad that you did that, because if you hadn't, you know, it probably would have fallen back on one of us. But we're here for you, Angie. I want you to know that. And again, thanks to the folks at NTSA and ADL. I think what you can count on from them is just like unbelievable support, just the invisible hands behind the scenes that they should and will, you know, make your leadership position for 22 a whole lot easier. I will say one thing though. Here's something to watch out for, and it's a trap that I fell into, and that is my panel, the panel I was supposed to moderate. I mean, I was so significantly outclassed by the people that were on that panel. It was mind-boggling to me. I mean, and I think I tried really, really hard to keep up with them, but I'm telling you, I was like 6 miles in trail of them. First person we had was Beth Novak. Despite the fact that, you know, we made an emphasis on technology, what I'd like everybody to, if I do this right, it's not just about the technology, it's about some of the other things that we absolutely rely on, things like vision and leadership. It's service, I think, were really important elements of the three panelists that I had a chance to talk to. Beth is the first chief innovation officer for the state of New Jersey. Now, she also worked in the Obama White House. She also is the director of GovLab, which is a quote laboratory that's run out of the University of Pennsylvania that looks for new and innovative ways to infuse innovation into our government. Fascinating person. And oh, by the way, you know, one of my takeaways was technology and innovation, they're linked, but they're not necessarily the same thing. And I think we should really be disciplined in our use of those two words. For Beth, it was all about open sources. It was all about the importance of data and the integrity of that data and being able to use that data to make good decisions in the future. Collective intelligence or shared appreciation, perspective on the state of affairs within our government. I'll call that transparency, which I think is really important. Technology can help provide some of that transparency. And then I think the other takeaway was we should be using agile technology to make us move faster in government. At the same time, I'll say if we're going to use agile technology, we also ought to be thinking about employing the agile philosophy in terms of how we develop our programs, and that certainly is applicable in all the things that we see that's taking place, as Keith rightly said, the enterprise of learning and training within our government. You know, one of the things I took away from Beth's discussion was, in today's day and age, what we've seen over the last 18 months, you know, technology used to be you know, only in the hands of people with those technical degrees, of people that, you know, that are PhDs and scientists and engineers. And I think what we've seen over the last 18 months is that the technology is available to everybody today. And we all ought to be thinking about, you know, how to use that in the future. So for me, it was really, where does technology reside? And everybody's got a say in that. Dan Correa was another panel member. He too worked in the Obama campaign, I believe, back in 2008. So a little bit of a link there. I think he also shares with Beth this sort of call to action, that as citizens, it's not only our right. I'll extend that and say it's our duty to be engaged. And one way that we can engage is to think about how we apply technology in the conduct and running of our government. Dan is the acting president of the Federation of American Scientists. He's a lawyer. He's an economist with degrees, significant degrees in both. Again, you can see how I'm significantly outclassed by our panelists. And he does all this with an approach of something that he started even prior to being on the Federation of American Scientists, and that was the Partnership for Public Service. And the takeaway that I got from Dan was, it's a call to action. You must do. We must get out there. It's all about action. It's not about talking. It's about action. And I was pretty motivated by that. I got to tell you, as a Marine, I always think that, you know, we sort of have the lock on, you know, running to the sound of guns and taking action. But, you know, Dan was very, very clear in terms of, you don't get credit for just talking about it. You got to do something. That was very, very clear to me. And then, of course, there was Amy Parker. And if you remember, Amy had been with Veterans Administration and had left, and but she still wanted to participate in iFEST and did it from her Airstream trailer in New England. And I'll tell you, Amy, just the fact that she worked really, really hard to participate in our panel, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. You know, if you remember, she used the word hope, and that one of our jobs as leaders in this field is to provide hope and to encourage people to do those things that both Beth and Dan encouraged us to do, and that is employ technology and how we conduct our business within the government, and that call to action to actually do things. I think my big takeaway from Amy was, we as leaders need to model the behavior we expect to see, and again, using Keith's words, in this enterprise of, you know, training, education, and learning in the future. So for me, it was all about paying attention to the technology that's out there, the call to action to employ that technology in the service of our government, and then modeling the behavior we expect to see in others. And so, you know, I probably got more out of it than Beth, Dan, or Amy did, but I really appreciate being able to be part of that panel. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Frank, for that insight. And then we're going to move over to Aaron. Aaron was the moderator for Modernizing Learning for Integrated Operations, and he's going to give us some insight into his panel discussions. Hey, Aaron, we can't hear you. Is there? Well, we seem to be having some technical difficulty with hearing Aaron, so we will move on to our next thing, but we'll come back to Aaron as soon as we can get his mic up and working. Aaron, just chime in when you can, when your mic is working, we'll come back to you, okay? All right, so one of the things that was done also that was really, I thought was a very good touch for the iFEST 2021, we had a People Choice Award that was given for our poster gallery. And in the poster gallery, as well as the virtual exhibit halls, there were, the feedback that we got from the attendees is they were great, valuable, and relevant. So if you get a chance, we don't close down the platform until 1 October. Go out and look at those. But the winning poster for best narrative was evolution of e-learning standards, moving from SCORM to XAPI, where does CMI5 fits. And then the best design was how to keep your castle retrofitting brick or mortar training. So be sure to check out those two posters that won the People Choice Awards. And also new to iFEST 2021 was the activities that we had. We had 12 interactive concurrent activities that were presented this year. And I'll just give you the 3 top activities that were most viewed from our attendees. It was from classroom to online to blended training, a challenge workshop toward effective blended learning. And then it was start making sense, integrate learning engineering into a team. And then the third one that was most viewed was mapping your ecosystem, something similar to what Keith was talking about, navigating the complexities of uniting content and data across multiple systems. So I'm gonna go back to Aaron and see if he was able to get his audio working or if he's on the phone to give us some insight into his panel discussion.
I switched over to the phone. Do you hear me now? Excellent. All right. Always have a plan B. That's, I think, an important observation as well for iFEST. I think that we managed to pull this off successfully with as a almost hybrid event. The War on the Rocks effort was a great stab at a hybrid. We did in fact have that panel in person, and I think there are going to be some useful lessons that we draw from that going into Viking 22. And thank you so much, Angie, for your leadership in taking on that challenge. This is not going to be an easy one at all. We are just barely getting to learn how to just barely beginning to get good at doing these online conferences, and now we completely shift gears and do a hybrid one, which is yet again a different thing, right? So this really is going to be new stuff, and you know, it's been a real pleasure to work with this leadership committee. Frank and Keith have both been great partners. Angie, you've done wonders on the program committee for years now, and it's just great to have you to really step up to leadership now. Also, sort of speaking out to the attendees of the webinar, I can't see all of your names, but I am assuming that a bunch of you are either core members of our program team or super users of iFEST, the really dedicated ones. Thank you, all of you, for your participation and engagement with iFEST and for caring so much about this community, not just the event itself, but the community, because it's a continuing conversation as we see right here. I was really delighted with the turnout on international, that we had 10% of the total participation represented by international participants is just fabulous. I think I'd like to see that number go even higher. But you're absolutely right, Keith, that the online element was, I think, a real facilitator. I think, honestly, that another facilitator was that, at least internationally, there's beginning to be some in-person events again. I attended a few of those, and I can say that iFEST was consistently one of the events that was promoted at those international gatherings of e-learning and distance learning centers of excellence and directors and so on from across the globe. So that marketing opportunity came up, but at the same time, just for your own situational awareness, iFEST has a real and quite positive reputation globally. It is brought up again and again as one of the events you really should go to. And I think that the panel discussion helped to really expose some of the meat behind that, and so some of the key messages that I heard out of that resilience came up again and again. I think that it's clear in our certainly in our own system, but absolutely among our partners globally, that the e-learning is and will from here forward be considered a component of resilience. When the rest of society stops functioning, we need to sustain our training and education, and e-learning is an important component of that resilience challenge. We heard amazing stories about Bosnia and Georgia and others basically flipping a switch, and in days or a couple weeks turning centers of excellence in e-learning run out of small offices from their military academies or TRADOCs, and for a government institution essentially at lightning speed, turning into national systems. And they're able to do that because they're so well prepared, but that was honestly, that was crazy, right? You don't flip a switch like that and go to a national system in days, but they really made it happen, and proved that resilience case. Interoperability is another thing that came up again and again. Obviously, these are our international partners who are attending iFEST. They want to play with us in our sandbox. They want us to play in their sandbox. I think as we talk about innovation and technology and standards and so on, it's really important that we make sure that we're always attentive to the interoperability challenge as well. We've got partners who are constantly trying to keep up with us, to make sure that they can continue to play. As we push forward with new technologies, the technologies that we shared with them, that we championed 10, 15 years ago, may render them inoperable in terms of joint training and education at this point. And we need to be really sensitive and careful to keep those channels of communication open so that they know where we're going, and to keep the channels for sharing open as well. The interoperability path goes both ways. One of the wonders of COVID and the pandemic is that, as I mentioned with the resilience challenge, there are all kinds of amazing innovations that have occurred internationally, and I think we have a lot to learn from our partners as well, and their innovations, and we can rise to meet their new standards just as they can rise to meet ours. Operational readiness came up again and again as well. I think that's a really exciting message, especially from our partners, but a great one for us to remember. We oftentimes, the U.S. is such a big system. and we get focused on our own belly button, and we sometimes lose the narrative on why are we doing this. You know, it's not about butts and chairs. It's about readiness ultimately, right? And it's outcomes. And the question is not how good of a course did we just deliver, but have we changed behavior, right? And I think we need to. Well, it was great for me to see our partners helping us to keep our eye on that ball. Obviously, multinational cooperation came up again and again. Some very specific ideas on that as well. I think, you know, it's we're all in this together. And with the National Defense Strategy, the second pillar is partnership. That's for very good reasons. And it was definitely a message that was sent loud and clear from the international panel. You know, I would only echo again what I think is, and it's great that some of the leadership panels on the domestic and the international side were on such sort of common message. There's a lot of talk on, you know, the technology side, data infrastructure, technology infrastructure, the interface of that data and technology infrastructures with human resource management infrastructure, but a lot as well about the human side, commitment and design. And so I think that there too, it was really good to hear that consistent awareness and articulate conveyance of the notion that a lot of our challenge is not the technology. The technology is for the most part pretty much in place. We've got a whole bunch of human problems, right? And institutional problems, and that's going to be a lot of the meat for our efforts moving forward with leveraging the lessons learned from this pandemic era. I guess the final takeaway that I got from our panel was its incredible diversity in terms of perspective, right? So we had leaders from Georgia, from Bosnia, from NATO, the United States, and aloha from Hawaii. This is my sprinkler system is just kicking in here in the backyard. It's 4:30 in the morning where I am. They all, from these very different perspectives, had such a common vision and common understanding, which to me just reinforces those messages that all these leaders from very different places, very different contexts, are all arriving at the same conclusions, which gives just great credence to their message, I think. Again, I just want to close by saying what a remarkable thing it is that we had such a high participation from internationals. I think that's a great credit to not just this iFEST, but the years of iFEST building up its reputation globally, and the real value that they're giving to folks. These are folks who are logging in and serving on panels and participating as audience from time zones all over the place, getting up at all kinds of crazy hours in the day to engage. So this is it means something to them. And for me, in terms of program leadership with iFEST, I just want to make sure that as we carry forward, that we continue to live up to that expectation, that we deserve that attention that they're giving us. Thanks. Over.
Thanks, Aaron, for that feedback from your panel discussion. We're going to move now into getting a little more interaction from our panel members, and we're just going to talk a little bit about, from their organization, the transition that they're making into future learning ecosystems, and what technologies they're interested in either incorporating in their organization, or that they're existing as current as right now, or that they want to learn more about to incorporate it in the future years. So we'll start off with Aaron, and then we'll work our way around to Frank and Keith. Aaron,
Can you hear me now?
there we go. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So we're doing a lot with learning analytics now, and especially as I trying to respond to that that imperative that we connect our e-learning with behavior change. So we really are looking to capture both metrics on the e-learning engagement and success against learning objectives, as well as success against performance on the job. Right. The environment that we're doing that we're making the most interesting progress in is exercises. It's a great space where you've got a captured audience essentially, and you can deliver pre-training immediate to the same training audience as you immediately then
Oops, I think we lost Aaron for right now. So when he comes back on, we'll let him finish up with his comment. Well, let's see.
Yeah.
And is he Aaron? Can we?
Am I back? Sorry.
Yeah, he's back. There we go.
With issues, but the so linking training objectives with learning objectives in an exercise environment has been really delivering for us in terms of beginning to parse out those causal relationships between the e-learning and behavior change. Another thing that we're going to be getting into in 22 and 23 is extraction of learning analytics, but really granular learning analytics from AR and VR. So AR and VR, we're just on the cusp. We have only begun to use and certainly scratch the surface on learning how to capture analytics out of AR and VR. But we want to get started because in 10 years from now, AR VR is going to be the iPhone of 10 years ago, right? It's going to be ubiquitous, and we need to get on top of this and catch that wave. Over.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. We'll go to Frank next.
Yes, sorry about that. I find whenever Keith or Aaron or you are talking, I wind up taking notes, right? So because if I was in trail of the panel, I'm in trail of you guys as well. So a couple of big things going on at DAU. I'm going to start phrasing it like people who talk about Ohio State. I'm going to say the Defense Acquisition University, and see how people feel about that. We've got a couple of big things going on. Obviously, a lot of what we are doing today has been dictated by our COVID response. And years ago, we used to sit around and talk a lot about like, hey, what are the possibilities of being able to do some of this stuff virtually? And we've been doing all of it now for the last 18 months. And it has been, it was a challenge. The folks at DAU responded well. I also have to give a big shout out to the folks at the Defense Acquisition Workforce because they responded as well. And so, both provider and customer, so to speak, behaved in such a way that I could say that I think that it has been successful. The president of DAU, Jim Woolsey, has thrown a challenge out to the Defense Acquisition University to become a platform of learning, training, and education for our defense acquisition workforce. And we're going to do that in 3 different areas: provide effortless learning, frictionless learning for the community. We're going to provide world-class content, and that means it just doesn't come from DAU. It can come from almost anywhere and everywhere, but that's why our partnership with ADL is so critical. And quite frankly, the relationship that we have with NTSA is also as important. And then the final piece of becoming a platform is exploiting our networks and growing our networks. And obviously, again, our relationship with ADL and NTSA, critically important, but events like iFEST and ITSEC coming up, by the way, in late November, early December timeframe, are critically important for us to extend our network. Near term, a lot of what we are doing now is really focused on implementing and understanding the benefits of XAPI, right? So the experience API, collecting the data that Aaron just talked about that was so important, so we can really feed that back into improving our assets and creating those effortless assets, those world-class assets that Jim Woolsey wants us to provide. Something else that I can kind of pile on, this idea about being interoperable and making sure we don't out-tech the people we're supposed to be working with and for, because I think that's kind of a theme that Aaron was coming up with. When I had Marine Corps Systems Command, by the way, it was something that I was terribly worried about, that we would, in our pursuit of technology, out-tech our allies and partners. And, that's annoying when it happens in the training world. It's dangerous and life-threatening when it happens when you're executing. And I find that not all the services are on the same step with respect to the equipment and network performance, so to speak, for everybody within the acquisition workforce to participate in a completely 100% virtual training environment. So I think one of the things we have to do is kind of decide on a standard so that we can train and educate our acquisition workforce. And that's something that's very important. We do have an artificial intelligence initiative that we're using at DAU, and I'm really excited about how that's going to work. And there's lots of people that are worried about being replaced and that the evil robots are going to take over the world. I'll just tell you right now, and I can't say it because I'm surrounded by devices that are produced by Amazon, so I'm not going to say the word, okay? But if anybody thinks that those things are going to take over the world, I got news for you. Yeah, we're like 1,000 years away, I think, before they take over the world. Maybe that's too conservative an estimate, but I think the time is right. I think it's not too late for us to jump on that. And I'm completely with Aaron on the whole virtual reality and augmented reality in terms of that is going to be the way that people learn and train in the future. Just some of the cost points of doing that are super attractive for us to exploit, let alone how we can really immerse the learner in a world that we can actually create in a safe and engaging way in the future. So I'm really excited about where DAU is going, and especially excited and appreciative of the relationship that we have with ADL and NTSA. Thanks.
Thanks, Frank. Keith?
Yes. First, I want to have a shout out to ADL also. Because of the way that they establish standards and because of the incubator processes they have for us to have proofs of principle and to pilot those capabilities, that has enabled all of the services in the Department of Defense. And it has caused us to collaborate, and it is bringing about a convergence that's been unprecedented. And so that is one of the things that between the leadership of ADL and the technology that's available today is one of the major advantages that I believe that the services are enjoying. Within the Army itself, we've had unprecedented collaboration over the last couple of years. In one area in particular, the Army loves this idea of developing concepts that look into the future and try and identify what our required capabilities are so that we'll be ready for that future. We have collaborated for 2 years with our training side in the Army as they developed an Army training concept focused on 2035. And within the education side, we've developed an Army learning concept 2035. And that level of collaboration allowed us to be able to look at where these different required capabilities were complementary, where they were different. So there were different pieces and parts we needed in training and education, and some that were identical. And so the complementary and identical are really critical now, because as you move forward in a resource constrained environment, if you can look at it and you can say both sides of this coin, training and education, rely on these 3 critical capabilities, then it also helps you establish priorities on how you move forward. That's what an ecosystem is about, is pulling about all the different information, all the different players, all the different technologies, so that you have a holistic view of what you're trying to achieve. A couple of other things real quick. We've got our Army Train Information System, which is how we want to manage our analysis, our development, our ranges, our delivery, all those different things. Currently, we've got over 30 legacy systems that all speak different computer language, quite frankly. None of them are integrated or were designed to work together. And that is being evolved now through ADIS into 4 integrated major capabilities. And so they will talk to each other. The data exchange is built in. It allows us to see all of those different connections. The other thing that we've done, and this is happening across the services to one extent or another, is we're integrating our new talent management processes and the way we manage people and talent within that ecosystem. And we're doing that primarily through assessments so that we understand more holistically the individual, but also capture then in a way that the information can be used as we develop and manage talent from also each of the individual courses and learning experiences. We're moving to cloud-based. We have a goal of X API and CMI5 in order to help us have more data-informed understanding and management of learning. And we also are retooling our workforce. And so over the past year, there's been an uptick in interest, and we're now beginning to invest in-house distributed learning capabilities for development of our workforce, who have up to this point been traditionally focused on how do we develop those learning products and learning experiences primarily within the classroom. And we primarily contracted for the development of distributive learning content. And so one of the things we need to do is retool our workforce. Areas that we're interested in, like Frank and DAU, one of the areas we're very interested in and excited about is artificial intelligence. Just last week, we agreed to participate in an artificial intelligence center of excellence consortium that is focused on training and education artificial intelligence versus the focus that it has in many other areas when it comes to weapon systems, soldier, machine interfaces, et cetera. And that's being done in collaboration with the Institute of Creative Technology, DevCom, which is one of the Army's research centers, and the University of Southern California. So that's one of those big areas that we're excited about, that we're moving into, because that AI allows us to get at tailoring and student-centered. It allows us to get at adaptable learning. It allows us to get at adaptable content and curriculum. So there are a lot of things that we believe that between AI and then combining that with the machine learning piece is going to allow us to really move into the future when it comes to that new normal and that new learning paradigm. And those are just a couple I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keith. I just wanted to mention a few of our leadership goals for iFEST 2022 before we get to the question and answer. So a few of our leadership goals for iFEST 2022, of course, is to continue with the increased attendance in our international community. But with that said, we also would like to strike a balance between academia, government, and industry. So we will be really looking forward to building, improving our relationship with academia. Also, we're going to be looking at how to capture interest, attendance, and participation from some of our younger audience to bring in their innovations, ideas, and so that we can move forward in the future with a collective group of folks. And then also, we want to talk a little bit about how you can get involved in iFEST 2022. Now for iFEST 2021, the platform is still available until 1 October. You just would need to go to the website and register. And you can still look at some of the things that we had discussed today. And for iFEST 2022 program committee, we're looking for folks who would like to join the program committee. So if you would also contact us through the NTSA or ADL initiative, we can certainly get your name and let you know when we're going to be having our meetings. We're looking at the first kickoff meeting to be in October. That'll give you a time to come up with some ideas, themes, and topics that you would like to share that we could possibly consider for iFEST 2022. So without further delay, we're going to move to giving the panel an opportunity to answer some of the questions that we received. And we'll start off with the first one. We can start with Frank on is the new normal across the Rubicon? Why or why not?
So that sounds very much like a question proposed by, I would consider him to be a mentor, Dr. Chris Hardy. It's the Rubicon is one of his favorite phrases. Let's face the reality. We're not going back. This is the way things are going to be done in the future. We get more access to folks. We get better use of their time. I think that the learning outcomes are better. One of the things that Dr. Hardy would tell me, that in the beginning, the surveys were as good, if not slightly better than we were when we were 100% in the classroom at DAU. And I don't want to speak for Aaron or Keith real quick, but I'll get off the stage. But as time has gone on, our survey data has improved, saying that the experience of our students is getting better. So I'm not sure what the new normal is, but it's not going to be 100% classroom training for DAU. I'll tell you that for sure. And I'll just let our other partners here respond. Over.
Thanks, Frank. Keith?
Yeah, couldn't agree more with Frank. There is no going back. And quite frankly, other than some people that are nostalgic about it, all the leaders that I am currently engaged with and the guidance that we're receiving for the Army is that it would be a mistake to go back. Now, obviously, there are things that we think are still most effectively done in the way of the traditional brick and mortar or face-to-face learning. One of the key things that we do believe that we will continue very similar to what we did in the past is when we bring in new soldiers. And so there's not just a learning aspect to that, there's an indoctrination piece to that. And so when you think about the different things that you think may be appropriate for a technology-based learning, you also have to think about those other goals that you're trying to achieve with your learner. So if modeling is one of those things that you're trying to do so that new soldiers know how to behave and they understand what right looks like, that's difficult to do in this type of a medium. And it's probably not as sticky if you're doing it with a video, even if it's a real person. So I do think it's across the Rubicon into the future. There will be more and more, and we're not going back. But we have to be very deliberate about assessing what the total learning experience is in order to make sure that we don't lose some goodness as an unintended consequence of moving forward in this area. Over.
Thanks, Keith. Aaron?
Yeah, it's hard to follow. I think you guys covered a lot already. I concur. This is the new normal, right? We're already there. I think we're perhaps still crossing that Rubicon, right? The passage isn't finished yet. There's good, and this is old research, not new research, but there's good empirical research that tells us that you get optimal outcomes in a hybrid environment when you blend online and in person. So we know that, and yet historically we've had a problem because it's the conversation has been cast in this brick and mortar versus online, as if they were competing somehow. And really, you get the optimal outcomes when you blend. The opportunity we have before us is to break that down and really refine our understanding of when do we get the most, and from when, from what, how, and for whom, learning what. And so as we can get more granular, we will really start to see the benefits of this new brave world that we're entering. Over.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. I think we kind of lost Aaron a little bit, but we appreciate all of your responses. Because we're getting short on time, there is one question that Keith wanted to answer. So I'm going to read that and give him an opportunity to answer that, and then we'll be moving into our closing remarks. So Keith, the question is, in particular, please discuss as relates to digital learning from engineering courses at college level, undergrad and graduate levels. At what point will learners choose face-to-face over digital learning environments for more hands-on training and learning?
Yeah, thank you, Angie. And I wanted to address this because I've also got a master's in civil engineering, and that's what I did in the Army. I was within the engineering branch and worked with the Corps of Engineers a number of years. But I want to broaden the response. I did some research in the past on the best ways to communicate. So it was more of a communications area when you're talking about collaboration and learning. And what we found as we looked at that is the higher you go on the level of complexity and conceptual requirements for collaboration, the more difficult it is to do with technology-enabled means, even with the type of collaborative software we have today. And there are just so many of those nonverbal, paraverbal, and ways to be able to draw out ideas and discuss those that are difficult to do even today in electronic medium. The other area that I would suggest that may be difficult for engineers or anyone is the ability to replicate some of the authentic experiences. Now for technical training, which is part of the question here, I really think that augmented reality and immersive reality is going to provide us capabilities in a way that allow us to get at much more of the technical skills than we can today. However, in many instances, there's no replacement for actually seeing it, feeling it, hearing it, smelling it. And so I would suggest that as the analysis is done on what you're trying to have your learners' outcomes be, that you really need to look at it from the perspective of how complex and conceptual, and what's the authentic learning experience necessary for them to achieve that learning outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. I'd just like to thank all the panel members today, Keith, Frank, and Aaron, for participating in the webinar. Appreciate your support. And I will now turn it over to Admiral Rob for closing remarks.
Hey, thanks, Angie. That was a really tremendous effort, and I think it was full of great content. So I thank you and the team for all of that. So we had a great review of iFEST 21 and a lead in, and I want to echo Angie's request. If you want to get involved, sign up and become part of the team. And it's a great way to network, but also get involved with the leadership and leadership challenges. Maybe you could be Angie some point, in the future. iFEST was really great. We had over 520 people registered this year, and I believe it has a lot of room to grow. iFEST has been an interesting experience for us in the last 2 years because we actually have had more people in the hybrid or the virtual environment than we did in person. So I think when you factor in the targeting of the international audience, which is an ADL objective as well, we find that sometimes this hybrid type of venue is the best solution. So we'll continue to find the best answer and work with ADL and try to fine tune this so that we can get the broadest reach and the best outcomes. And we're also interested in the availability of folks tuning in to the content after the event. Also think there was a lot of great thinking here related to ARVR, AI, tailored learning. I certainly agree with Frank that this is the wave of the future. And this is a prime focus of NTSA as well as all of our programs, as well as EdTech. So next month's webinar, we'll gather the leaders of the service modeling and simulation offices, which are in each service, and they're growing, to discuss their efforts to incorporate modeling simulation in all aspects of military requirements and operations. These offices work on the perimeter. They're growing in influence, and we need to empower them if we're going to really find modeling and simulation embedded in everything we do in terms of government acquisition and operations. So I'd like to close by inviting all of you to ITSEC, which is going to be held in Orlando, 30 November through 3 December. We're very excited to return in person this year. We are on track to have a full up ITSEC, and I think that all the trends are very good. So I appreciate you all need to come. We're going to continue this discussion that we had today and at iFEST and iFEST last year at ITSEC with another blended audience. So that's it for us today. So thanks for attending and being part of our community, and we hope you stay safe.